Welcome back to the 1% Frequency podcast. I am so excited because today I have a very special guest with us and we're going to have some amazing conversations. So I am extremely excited to welcome here Alex, full name Alexandra Artzoglou. Did I get that right?
That was
Yes.
good. Thank you.
Wow. Amazing. I'm so glad. So, Alex is a psychedelic integration and transformational life coach who helps seekers turn peak experiences, such as ceremonies, retreats, spiritual awakenings, into a grounded, sustainable new normal. Drawing on a background in psychology, training in compassionate inquiry, yoga, meditation, and a decade of personal development and global retreat experience, she blends trauma informed coaching and somatics with vision, purpose, and real world action. Alexandra works with high functioning seekers and visionaries who are done chasing breakthroughs and are ready to build a life that feels deeply aligned and worth living. First off, I love that because I think one of the topics the two of us really connected over was this creation of like sustainable, what do you call the new normal, which I love that
Yeah.
expression, rather than
Yeah.
chasing these quick fixes, like peak
Yeah.
experiences, shiny object syndrome, which I feel it's becoming more and more and more relevant in this dopamine hit fueled society, especially with social media. And I think both of
Yeah.
us are entrepreneurs. Most of the people listening to this are entrepreneurs. And it's so important in entrepreneurship, right? To have this staying power, but especially when we integrate that with spiritual growth, which all of us are doing as well, we're kind of
Yeah.
really having to stay mindful of what's important and how to sustain this new baseline, especially as we're talking about new identities, quantum leaping, embodying the new frequency. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. So, Alex, let's just get started with you telling us about you and how you ended up here, because you've said kind of similarly to me, you've had, let's say, the past decade that's been a little bit out of the ordinary for most people, a lot of traveling, moving experiences that most people haven't had. So tell us about that. And one thing specifically that I'm interested about within that is what was it inside of you that drove you to seek these experiences? Because I think there's a type of people that are just hungry
Yeah.
for this different kind of
Yeah.
life. I was called crazy,
Yeah.
obsessive many times in my life. So
Yeah.
I would love you to
Yeah.
speak to this part as well.
Oh, this is gonna be so good. It's like as you said, like chasing the out of ordinary. It just felt like growing up felt like an ordinary life. And it felt like my dad would go to work and work a lot, and he didn't seem particularly happy. And my mom would stay at home and take care of me, and that didn't seem particularly happy. And so it felt like this routine life, for me as a child, that was like the standard, right? Like that was the ordinary. I was like, well, that's clearly not how happiness is made. So let me do the opposite of that. So it kind of started like I wanted to leave. I was born and raised in Greece. And ever since I was about 11, 12, I started like preaching to everybody, I'm gonna leave. Like as soon as I turn 18, I'm gonna be out of this country and out in the world.
I was literally the same. I think at 11 for me was when I was like, 18, I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, this is going to be a really fun conversation. So when I did turn 18, I was like, okay, peace out. And then my parents were like, what do you mean? I'm like, I was literally telling you I'm going to leave for like 6 years. And they were like, well, we thought you're just a kid and you're going to grow out of it. I was like, hello, like, how can you even be shocked? Like, this is not news. This is exactly what I've been. Anyway. So, but as I like to say, instead of going basic, I went premium. So instead of going with a backpack, sleeping on a bench in New York City, which was my teenage idea of what just being free and out in the world meant, my parents insisted I get an education. And I was like, okay, then let's do psychology. Because in Greek, psychology means the science of the psyche. And I always had these questions of who am I and what's the point? It's really annoying to grow up with a teenager who's asking, what's the point? It's like, do your homework. What's the point? Go to school. What's the point? It's like, can you just do the things? Can you just be a child? I could not. So I don't know if it was like this expanded awareness or consciousness that some of us are born into, like you said, not everyone has this itch that it's impossible to scratch. I gotta get out and see stuff and experience stuff and have my life changed. And I have to find out who I am and what the point is. And so I did study psychology. That was in the UK, which was the going premium, because then I ended up having an education, going to university. And by the end of my degree, it taught me nothing about the psyche. Maybe I just went with the wrong expectations, but I was like, well, that's what the word means.
Can I just
Learn
like
nothing.
intercept? I
Yeah,
went
of
to
course.
the UK. Where were you in the UK? Just out of curiosity.
I was in Essex.
Okay, I was in London,
Yeah.
but I did
Oh, yeah,
neuroscience
pretty
as
close.
well. I think I had very
Yeah.
similar things. I was also like, I want to understand human behavior. Why do we do things that we do? I was also like a super big advocate for actually like legalization of marijuana and psychedelics in high school. So I did a lot
Yeah.
of psychopharmacology. And then at the end of 4 years, I was like, right, I still have no idea. Like, I still cannot answer any of the questions I had. Anyway,
Exactly.
just think the parallels
Yeah,
of
exactly. Like, I didn't know it would be so off. But what I often say is that what the main gift that this degree did for me, apart from many, like just being an international place, and like I gained a lot from that experience. But interestingly, the turning point was on the final year of my degree. I was very, very anxious about not being able to graduate because I was pretty shitty at statistics. And I had to do this like research project that was statistics. And I was like, I just wanted to understand human behavior and why some people are called abnormal and what's the normal. Like, that's what I signed up for. But now, in order to graduate, I need to learn how to do stats. And I was extremely anxious for many months. And like I would wake up and go to sleep crying, drowning in anxiety, and nothing helped. Like traditional counseling didn't help. A psychiatrist prescribed Xanax, like to be able to sleep. Some of my friends recommended that I smoke weed, and Xanax and weed would stop me. Counseling was completely useless. Xanax and weed would stop me from crying, but I could still feel anxiety and sadness. And I was like, so what's the point of doing either of those? Like, yeah, I'm not crying. I'm more like a vegetable. I'm not like, I'm just kind of, but I'm still feeling it. So that's not working. So I said to myself, okay, I think there's only one tool here to try. I'm going to sit down and meditate. And I'm going to sit down and meditate until I feel something. And I don't care if it was Saturday morning. I don't care if it takes until Sunday night. I'm going to be sitting here following the instructions like the Buddha, cross-legged, spine straight, closed eyes, follow the breath until I feel something. And oh my gosh, within 50 minutes, it felt as if I was on psychedelics. It felt as if I realized that I am not just the body I see in the mirror. I'm an energy residing inside my body. And it felt as if my energy, my consciousness like shoot up into a universe where everything is just energy. Everything is just energy. And when I opened my eyes, I had The Power of Now next to me by Eckhart Tolle, and I started reading, and it felt as if I wrote it myself. I'm like, I understand everything clearly. That's exactly what I feel. And then suddenly things that Jesus said, because my mom raised me Christian and then I stopped doing that. But things that Jesus said were coming back to me, and I was like, Jesus, exactly what, like, I so agree with what he said. I see it. I fully see it. And I opened my eyes and I just saw, Essex is pretty much countryside. So I just saw trees and birds and the sky and realized that, oh my gosh, I am alive in a world that's alive. And for the first time in my life, I was in the present moment. I was not thinking of the future. I was not stressed about the past. I was not depressed. I was just in the present moment, and there was no thought. It was just insane gratitude and peace. And I was like, well, whatever that is, I want to do more of that. So I went to India, as you do, graduated my bachelor's. Cliches are cliches for a reason. So I did manage to graduate the degree. And then 2 months after, actually 1 month after my graduation, I flew to India. And I almost accidentally got into yoga. Because also I thought yoga would help me meditate, which it does. That's kind of how yoga was invented, to calm down the body in order to be able to meditate. And then I became a yoga teacher for a bit. But as with all seekers, I feel like so many times, like with Ram Dass and like Stan Grof, like so many of us in this space will easily move from something like psychology to contemplative practice like meditation, yoga, to psychedelics. It's a cocktail. It's a very common recipe. So many of us follow these ingredients. And I've always had this knowing that there must be more to life than this. And meditation was a massive opening. And then when I tried psychedelics, especially MDMA and then LSD at the time, I was like, yep, I knew it. There's so much more to life than this. And I wasn't crazy. This is the tool. Like, this is how we get deeper. This is how we figure out who we are and what's the nature of reality and what's the nature of everything, energy. And so, yeah, it's been a long journey. Then I did a lot of personal development courses, retreats, going deeper into different meditation techniques and learning more about happiness, changing my beliefs, like different types of work that I did on myself. And then I was able to say, you know what? I feel like my life is actually, I feel like I answered the big questions for myself. Who am I? What is the point? And what is my purpose? And purpose can be ever evolving, but I have an exciting direction that I'm pumped about. And I felt like, you know what, from this place, I can help other people that want to be happier, that have this itch of like, what is this all about? And they are on this path. So I started coaching, and then I just got trained seeing like what my clients need that I cannot support with, like trauma. So I did a deep dive on childhood trauma. I did training on that, and so on and so forth. And it's still unfolding. Sometimes I say I'm more of a therapist than a coach, and more of a coach than a therapist. But that has been the journey, of course, of like starting with healing myself and understanding myself, to then evolving to, okay, how can I now share that? Because as soon as I felt like life is just like this experience with meditation, that so many people are like drowning in anxiety, and it's like, there is a way out of that. There is a way out of that. And there is a reality where you are so present. It's as if you've smoked weed. But it's as if like you're stoned and you're high, because all of this exists within you. And psychedelics or meditation, like different practices, help you tap in. They clear out the fog so you can see and tap in easily. But it's within you, which then led me to, hey, I've had so many amazing experiences in my life, in different retreats, in Joe Dispenza, in so many places. But then we come back and then it all dies down and it goes downhill. And then people feel like, oh, now I have to go back to the ordinary world, to normal life. And I'm like, no, you don't. You can self-actualize if you continue doing the work at home, which is why then I got way more, for the last 3 years, I got way more obsessed about integration than about the peak experience themselves. Because it's like the peak experience opens the door. You get to taste, oh my gosh, life can be completely different. I thought it was one way. Now I realize, oh, that was, yeah, if I change my perspective, if I'm looking at a tree and I see this one, but then I go on the other side, I see a different side of the tree, and I'm like, oh, actually, there's more ways to do this. So that's why I'm like, okay, that peak experiences open the door. Without them, it's really hard to know. You need to experience that yourself. But then how can we take that and keep feeding it, keep watering the seed, keep practicing it so that it becomes a part of our lives, so that with the next big experience, you're actually going to a next level and then a next level. And this is the way I see it, the process to self-actualization. There's more.
What was it like for you when you had these first few peak experiences? Because I know my experience was similar. I had my spiritual awakening in 2018 with ayahuasca, which was a pretty big kind of shooting out into space.
Gosh.
Holy shit, I remember how the universe works. I think it's
Yeah.
such a fascinating thing that you said, that so many, because I believe deeply, and I think you alluded to that. I think there are a lot of people, especially young people now, and more kids, who are coming here with this elevated state of consciousness, and then there's this itch, this hunger, right? You know there's something more. You may not be able to like pinpoint what that is, but there's just this feeling. And then for me, the experience was very similar to yours. It was kind of like just removing the curtain, and I was like, Yeah, now I remember what life actually is. And then you read these
Yeah,
books that other people wrote, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I understand exactly what this means. Oh, yeah, this makes
exactly.
perfect sense. And other people may be studying these works for years, and you're like, no, 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 this is it.
Yeah,
Like, this is
yeah,
exactly what it means. This is how it's applied. But I know
yeah.
for me as well, I came back from that retreat and then I went through the biggest dark night of the soul of my entire life
Mm,
because
mm,
I didn't have those tools for integration. So I would love
yeah.
to hear a little bit about what has been your experience with that and when was it the
Mm,
moment did you really realize that integration is
mm,
the core? That's the actual work, not
yeah.
endless retreats, not another plant medicine experience.
Yeah, yeah, such a good question. 'Cause there's something that I'm gonna share that I wish every person that's interested in trying psychedelics could hear and possibly follow. And that was shared in my training as a psychedelic coach. And without even knowing that's kind of how I did it in my life, without knowing that that is almost like the protocol or the right way of I mean, there's no right or wrong. When someone has a calling to a specific psychedelic, then by all means follow the calling. Psychedelics always start with a calling. It's this mystery, it's the mystery. So if you get then something, the idea, the inspiration, something, then and it's like and psychedelics seems like an aligned path, then do pursue that. That said, there's some psychedelics that are easier to start with than others. And ayahuasca is not a starter psychedelic, which
No.
it, it's not, as you've experienced. Is in your
I
first
mean,
hand experience.
luckily, being in London before I had my fair and studying, UCL did this beautiful thing where they combined the Department of Neuroscience with Department of Pharmacology, which I
Ah,
think
yeah,
is simultaneously the best and the worst thing in the world because there was a bunch of nerds that loved talking about the brain, but also knew everything about drugs. So
yeah,
ayahuasca was not
yeah.
exactly my first psychedelic experience, let's call
Okay,
it that. But I agree
okay,
with you. It
got it.
is not a starter. It's not a starter
Yeah,
experience.
and exactly. So on one hand, ayahuasca is not a starter psychedelic, and on the other hand, psychedelics are not a starter personal development thing. So one of my lecturers in my training used to say that psychedelics are like a psychological sledgehammer. And not everyone needs to go there. There's
Yeah.
other things in the spectrum
Yeah.
that it could be like starting with meditation, starting with yoga, starting with breath work, hypnosis, like something else, because psychedelic is an altered state of consciousness. Now, I don't love that term because it implies that there's a normal state of consciousness, which is
Mhm.
this. I genuinely believe that this is the altered one, because if we're distracted and scattered and all over the place and don't feel good, that's not normal. That
No,
is
I
abnormal.
agree.
That is, that
I
is
I
distorted.
totally agree with that.
But it's like, well, we can call it expanded state of consciousness or higher consciousness. And there's other ways like hypnosis, like breath work to access that, not to that extent, because yeah, what the psychedelic no other modality can do. That is true. It is. Yeah, an exogenous substance that evokes an experience that it's really hard to have without it. I mean, Ram Dass's guru supposedly had it without LSD. Anyway, we're not gonna go there. For those who know the Ram Dass's guru story, but we're not gonna go there. So what I would recommend for someone who is interested in exploring the psyche, exploring themselves, getting to step out of this illusion of reality. If reality doesn't feel great and satisfying, you're probably doing it wrong because it's
Yeah.
supposed to feel good.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be in alignment. There's supposed to be joy and flow and ideas and just, the environment to help us be more of who we are. That is how it's meant to be. And then if we are out of alignment, we might explore therapy, meditation, different ways. Now, the way I was taught it is like when you have tried these modalities for a bit and you're like, okay, maybe I have like a fair sense of maybe that thoughts are not who I am. They're kind of like clouds that come and go, but not all of my thoughts are true. In fact, probably most of them are not. So when you start to have some insights of like, okay, maybe I often say that healing starts with unlearning. So you're like, oh, I thought it was this way, but apparently that was just my mom's belief. And do I really believe that? And like, do I want to believe that? And what if I believe something else? And what if I don't want to do this because I used to think that I want to make my parents proud, but after all, I actually want to do this other thing, and it's okay if I don't, and it blah 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 blah. So we go on our journey. We land when we do. And then if someone wants to enter the psychedelic world, it could be interesting to start with microdosing. Because then you are ingesting an exogenous substance, which helps you experience, for example, more presence, as if like in a situation that you would normally be absolutely lost in thought and you're constantly bombarded by voices. Now you can just be in your laptop doing work, being in a flow state without all of that inner chatter. And I can be like, oh, didn't realize that that version of life exists. Or if someone says something triggering, but instead of yelling at them, you just see it for what it is, a trigger, instead of, being taken over. And then after microdosing, it could be something like MDMA or ketamine. Now, MDMA in general, it's a really loving drug. It's hard for things to go downhill. So it's a good context to explore yourself. And I often found, like, as part of coaching work, that so often, so many of the issues that we have, we think it's our partner, our relationship, the environment, work, this and this and that. But really, it goes down to not feeling good enough, not loving ourselves, not feeling like we deserve the things that we want, like lack of self-worth. And it feels like when we start with MDMA, we can tap into that sense of worth and build our life from there. And then things that used to be a problem, you're like, actually, now that I'm okay with myself, that's not a problem. Or it's easier to cut it out of my life. So it feels like MDMA is a much nicer starter medicine, because it's not 100% a psychedelic, but anyway, it's an empathogen. Anyway, and then after that, LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, aka magic mushrooms or truffles in the Netherlands, is also a nice, like, kind of like we're doing the ladder, right? Like from kind of doing the groundwork, say meditation. Then we plant a seed, say microdosing. Then the seed grows a little bit. It's like, okay, MDMA. And then LSD or psilocybin can be a next step to experience more of an altered state of things actually starting to move. And maybe you're talking to things that normally you wouldn't, like plants and animals and other entities.
Spiders.
Spirit guides.
I had the best conversation with spiders on San Pedro. It was such a vibey. I was like, I don't know why, but we just don't get along. So we're gonna have this conversation, but please stay like 30 centimeters away from me. And the spider was
There
like,
you go.
Cool. Carry on.
Exactly. I love it. The client session I had right before this, we were talking about the same thing of like talking to birds. Yeah. So LSD and psilocybin would be a better way to go. Now, that said, I had a bunch of experiences with LSD. LSD is my favorite thing in the world. And no amount of LSD prepared me for ayahuasca.
I can confirm that, to be honest. Yes. It is not quite. Although I do have to say that I have had some experiences with magic mushrooms that were on par, like different frequency, but in terms of potency, very comparable, or even maybe more potent than some of the ayahuasca experiences I had.
Yeah, that's common. And it can be for many reasons. It could be, there's over 180 psychedelic species of psychedelic mushrooms. So sometimes it's a combination, sometimes it's how it's grown. Sometimes if they're grown next to ayahuasca, it can also take some of the elements. Even the visuals can be kind of like ayahuasca or DMT like. That can happen for sure. And so that is kind of the ladder of how I would go. And then after LSD and psilocybin, it would be closer to ayahuasca, iboga. And if someone feels like, which is more of, it's a different experience. It's more of a spiritual experience. That said, I also feel like the more I work with psychedelics, the less I know how to work with psychedelics in a way. Because the breadth expands so much and you realize, oh, I thought this can happen. Apparently way more things can happen. So it's not just something that is to be prescribed or not. It's just a good ladder, because the experience, like, for example, my ayahuasca experience was that the first thing that happened was that everything was dissolving,
Mm-hmm.
including myself. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that I knew, even the ground, all the whole world, myself, my body, everything, I was almost as if it was stopping to exist. It was melting. And that was pretty terrifying, even though I was pretty familiar with the LSD experience of not really being in my
Yeah.
normal, not normal state of consciousness. So I was familiar with that, but still, ayahuasca was quite a deeper level. And then after that, kind of like I guess the top of hierarchy would be 5-MeO DMT, which, as far as I know, is the most potent psychedelic. And again, like even this summer, I had experiences where I felt like I'm dying, and I wasn't ready to die. And then I
Yeah.
went to Burning Man, and my whole burn was about death. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had a preparation ceremony about Burning Man, and that was about dying. And then my whole thing went, the burn was about dying. And then my integration session was about dying. And I'm like, okay, I guess to really fully live, we gotta be willing to die. No one taught me that in school. Anyway, so that is just how I would kind of recommend it. And that is how, without even knowing, I did it myself. Like I did go from, I actually had MDMA before I tried meditation properly. But then I had that meditation, which completely changed the course of my life. And then there was just a bit more MDMA, and then LSD, and then ayahuasca, and then 5-MeO, which possibly, like for me, it was not as traumatizing, because it kind of felt like, okay, I'm understanding a bit more about my psyche and the world. Okay, let's go deeper. Okay, it just helps to have that. But the fact that no one prepares properly for ayahuasca, knowing how it's gonna go, and there's two ways to prepare someone to be prepared. One is to understand how this medicine works. you it's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced what an ego dissolution might be, what
Mm.
everything dissolving in itself is going to be. And it can be, and for most of it, like to this day, before a psychedelic journey, I will have some fear. You never know what's going on, and the more I know my psyche, the more pain comes up, because I can hold it much better.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, oh, very likely I'm gonna be crying for 5 hours. I can hold it, but still, you're like, well, who knows what my crazy psyche has been storing again.
Yeah. Yeah. What is
So
I
that's the
have a
thing.
question. I have a question around this because I think when I went to the retreat, but I spoke with the medicine man before. They interviewed every participant to make sure it was a fit, which was really good. And it was, a small group. And it was vetoed before by another person. So I always tell people as well, because I helped co-facilitate some ceremonies in the past. And I was like, do not go to Peru and do it with a random person. Like people do this. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
that is Russian roulette for your psyche.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there, what was interesting was that the medicine men and women that were leading that ceremony specifically said, do not read anything about ayahuasca. Don't read about other
Mm.
people's experiences because it's going to influence the journey. And the way the retreat
Mm.
was set up at the time was basically 2 ceremonies with ayahuasca, 1 day break, and then last day was San Pedro. And I recently talked to the medicine man, and he said that they actually switched it around, that they first do San Pedro because they saw
Mm.
that so many
Mm.
people came with so many preconceived notions of what ayahuasca is going to be like that it was messing with the actual ceremonies because so much of the
Mm.
ego and expectation was coming into the space. So I'm actually
Yeah.
wondering, what is your take on
Mm.
that? Because I
Mm.
completely agree and understand your viewpoint, right? Of like, it's probably good to
Mm.
know roughly what you're getting into. And at the same time, knowing, let's say, how powerful my mind is, I can also see
Yeah.
myself injecting expectation and kind of
Yeah.
hijacking the experience because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Like, as a rule of thumb, I say if you go to a retreat where there is preparation, especially with something like ayahuasca, which is an indigenous medicine, and they have been working it for millennia. So it's like, if they are giving you a way to prepare, do that, because they brewed it and it's been passed through, ideally, their lineage.
Yeah.
So I would follow their instructions. Now, what's more important for me is want to know themselves enough. And it's like, when is it ever enough? Well, do you have some like basic self-regulation practices of like, I can come back to the breath? Like if it gets overwhelming, I can come back. Now it's really there's so many disclaimers for an ayahuasca trip, because it's like you will probably forget everything that you know when you are there. It's as if your conscious mind is not very much online, if at all. That said, like, have that the more someone knows thyself and has prepared, either through whatever coaching, therapy, like a mix of both, right, or like meditation, and they start to understand what is, in internal family systems language, what is the self and what is a part,
Mm-hmm.
because fear is a part,
Yeah.
overwhelm is a part. Now, when I've learned that, when I trained in compassion inquiry, when I understood how trauma works, how healing works, I was able to work with fear on psychedelics much better than I could without them. And my psychedelic journeys became about 10 layers deeper,
Yeah.
because I was able to understand and navigate my mind much differently. It was like I am in the seat of my true self right now. And this is myself. This is its presence, and there's clarity, and everything is good. It's just this present. It's the observer in meditation. And if fear comes up, I can talk to it like a part. It's like, oh, I see you. Why do you feel the need to show up? I would
Mm.
love to get to know you. Can you please tell me why are you here? Like out of a place of curiosity, not judgment, not I wish you weren't here, not trying to overcome, not trying to bypass and think of something positive to distract yourself. It's like, oh, I see you're here. Let's welcome you in. You're here for a reason. I trust that you're here and you're a part of me. And I want to get to know. So the biggest way that I would help someone prepare for any psychedelic, and that is why we would do a minimum 3 months
Yeah.
of preparation. And I used to run psychedelic integration circles in Madeira, and then the one person came one day and he was like, well, I just had an ayahuasca ceremony. It was the best thing ever. And like, so many of my friends are therapists, and honestly, if I am to suggest one thing, is the best preparation for ayahuasca is 2 years in therapy. And it's like,
I
that
see
also
that.
speaks, it's like knowing yourself, and then you have a very different experience. But with also recently, I was listening to someone who is an indigenous person and serves, especially San Pedro. And he was saying how to really, for them to understand, he was from the Andean tradition. So in Peru, he was saying that for them to prepare for ayahuasca is to understand the tradition. Sometimes for them, like even for Huachuma, San Pedro, is to have it in your home and talk to it, ask questions without ingesting it. It's to talk
Mm.
with the teachers, it's to go to some of their lectures, their talks, and understand like how they work it. So it's a very different way to how we would think, because we're very isolated and compartmentalized in the West, while there it's very much like everything is so much more interconnected. So yeah, he had completely different guidelines. And I also know that different shamans, different traditions will have different guidelines. Some will tell you to do a dieta and to only eat certain things. Others are not strict on that part. So it's like, it really depends on like if you go to Brazil, it very different than how it's done in different countries, like in Colombia, in Peru. So in the end of the day, when someone goes with that medicine, I would just trust the lineage and get curious about how can I best prepare, like according to these people that serve it for me. And for myself, like how can I best prepare, even in terms of intentions? Like, what am I here to do? Because without an intention, it becomes like any psychedelic. It's no longer like a medicine. It just becomes like, whoa, look at the clouds, and whoa, oh yeah, that memory with my dad. But you're not actually solving anything or helping your life improve to move forward better. You're just there in Wonderland, which can be a fun experience. Like recreational use is also great. But it's just different. It's really nice to be intentional.
Yeah,
Cats are
100%.
welcome.
Yeah, cats love hanging out with us.
I love
Okay.
it.
I have another. I really want to return back to the new normal part, but before I want to
Yeah.
ask you another question that I'm really curious to hear your view on. Because for me, so from 2018 to about 2 years ago, so must have been summer 2023, I was working with ayahuasca on a somewhat regular basis. So we're going to say 2 to 3 times a year. And then sometimes other mainly magic mushrooms in between. And then in 2023, I was working with an energy healer, and it was really on like expanding my consciousness, a lot of meditation. And it was very interesting because at the time, two things happened. First, which was very interesting, was that I was on a few occasions co facilitating an ayahuasca retreat. I would drink the medicine and it would do nothing for me. It wouldn't change anything. And then at the same time, I was working with this healer, and she was like, I think it's really time for you to stop working with exogenous
Mm,
substances and start
mm-hmm,
really working on your own internal vibration. So, no
mm,
longer working with anything outside of you, but really kind of refining what is inside, what is actually you. And so, I'm very interested to hear, how do you view this? Like, what is
yeah.
the purpose of using exogenous substances? And is
Mm-hmm,
there, because I've heard this also from people who come maybe from more Buddhist teachings, that they're not necessarily fond of the use of plant medicine. And obviously for me it was life-changing. It completely changed my life trajectory. Never in my life will I say that it was not useful or incredibly beneficial. And I can also acknowledge that it is an exogenous frequency, and each
yeah.
medicine has its own vibration we're putting into our
Yeah.
system. So I would love to
Yeah.
hear your perspective on, what do you see is the role of these medicines in our evolution? And
Mm,
is there
mm.
a point for them to maybe no longer be a part of it? Is that just extremely individual? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Great. That's so much to share, and this is such an important conversation to have. So psychedelic like brews and I mean magic mushrooms have existed since probably the beginning of time. Some people say, I mean, some people, it was probably Terence McKenna, which created the stone ape theory, saying that when we were all apes, at some point, probably they started eating mushrooms and developing a lot. And they also say that without magic mushrooms, we wouldn't have communication and language because consciousness expanded and we started tapping into these places. Now, every culture, every civilization, including ancient Greece, the Americas, India, Australia, they had rituals. Often it was sacred, ceremonial, religious rituals about death and rebirth. It was initiations, the equivalent of probably like a bar mitzvah, but
Yeah.
in a way, in the way that actually works. Of like you go in not knowing,
I love how
and
you just dissed the Abrahamic traditions. Like, I love that. Carry on.
it doesn't feel like it does much for to people I've talked to, and then
Also,
I like
baptism or confirmation, I didn't have much of an effect. I am gonna admit to that. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. If only people went to church to increase consciousness and collectively meditate on some target, could be could be
Wow.
so many things, so
Yeah.
many things. Anyway,
Yeah. Totally agree.
because I had like to give you an example, like this burn, like I went to Burning Man this year, and it felt like truly I went in as a child and I came out more of an adult, and it felt like, oh, that's probably what a bar mitzvah is supposed to be. That is a true initiate, a true rite of passage. Of I came in with this childlike idea of how the world is, and based on this experience, oh my gosh, we're all gonna die, so might as well live and create something worth building, worth living for. Yeah. And for me that was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be. And that's what people have done s- forever, often with psychedelics, because to be in this altered state is just so important. Now, that said, the experience of ayahuasca not working or not doing anything, I've had it too. I've had it too. And many people that I know and I've spoken to have had it. I think mainly it could be two things, but it could be more things that I don't know of. So, humility there. I don't I don't say that I know for sure or that I know all the ways, but in my experience, it could be two things. It could be one, resistance of but that's especially for people who have not really looked at themselves. And they say they want change, but they are afraid of what might come up, and they are resistant to doing other work that does not look like a quick fix. Because trauma work works, for example. And if someone doesn't want to do the work, 'cause psychedelics will not do the work. They will show you where the work is. They will open the door and point the finger and be like, this is something that you can continue working on. But many people stop there. They're like, oh, they treat the peak experience as if it's the end of the movie when it's actually the start, but then they don't watch the rest of the movie.
In the
They
trailer.
just go back to the previous movie. Exactly. It's like, yeah, if you do this work, this is how it's going to go. And then people are like, oh, cool, that was a great movie. And it's like, no, that was just a trailer.
Yeah.
But so that's a misconception of like, oh, psychedelics are gonna fix me. It's like, no, they won't. But if you don't want to do the work, very likely you're not ready. The resistance is really telling you that you're not ready. And so a very potent psychedelic will not do anything. So you'll just be spending your time waiting for it to kick in, and it will never kick in. Another reason it might be, and maybe that was for your case, I think that was for my case too, because I went to my second ayahuasca ceremony a month and a half after the first. I didn't know back then that you're supposed to integrate. I didn't know what that word meant at all. And nothing happened. And I think that is because you haven't really integrated. And so ayahuasca is like, I got nothing else for you. Like that was a work. So
Babe.
like, I think we're okay for now. I
Yeah.
literally have nothing else for you. So that's why I think that the nothing happens. No experience happens. Now regarding the yes to psychedelics or no to psychedelics, I think that's a really good conversation. Like, I highly believe that we have seasons where we might need more work, whether that is from a coach, whether that is from a psychedelic, whether that is for something else. And sometimes we might be like, actually, I'm pretty good right now. And then life lives and we enter another season, another hero's journey. And you're like, you know what? I need a shakeup, or I need to speak to the medicine again. And I need some help because I've exhausted all the other tools. I do my meditation, for example. I do my hobbies and I express myself there. And I have good relationships and I microdose and from time to time. And I'm still kind of stuck. Then that could be a good time to have another experience, like a psychedelic experience. But it's not to be used as a crutch. For sure, people can go through years without having psychedelic experiences. And this is how I see, because psychedelics are allies and helpers, and it's a tool. Again, it shows you where the work is. And it's a tool that it makes it easier to do work that would be harder and sometimes impossible without it. What I mean with that is that now that MAPS in the US is trying to legalize MDMA for PTSD, it's because those veterans that go to work and come back, most of them commit suicide. Most of them come back and cannot overcome what they've seen, what they've experienced, their friends that died, them having to kill and rape people. And they are depressed and their marriages collapse and things don't go well for them. And no amount of non-psychedelic modality has helped them. And when they take MDMA as part of therapy, it happens across, through the course of a few months, and they actually get to step out of the post-traumatic stress and come back to presence, come back to wholeness, come back to that healed version that is always there. And that is, again, a really good time for them to do that because it's hard to not do it. But I see healing in general as 50% us doing our own work and 50% having support. Because on one hand, yes, we have answers within us, like that meditation, the first meditation that I've had that I talked to you about, it honestly felt I don't need to read any book. I have the book written within me. All I got to do is read it. I have the answers. Why am I asking other people? Like, I know what I need to know. So in that moment, it felt like I don't need psychedelics. I don't need anything. I just need to keep meditating. because it feels good. And then I've had many more times since then, that was in 2016, that I was like, no, actually, I'm meditating and I'm still stuck. And I do need to speak to grandmother ayahuasca. I do need an LSD journey to like it's always the same intention for me. Remember who you are, because it feels like I forget. It's like, let's come back to center. So I always see it like that 50-50, like 50% you do your own work. And if you cannot, if you're in a dark phase, especially, and it's hard to dig ourselves out of a hole. It's easier for someone to lend us a hand and pull us out. And sometimes that is like a professional, sometimes it's a loving person and like relative, and other times it could be like a psychedelic. I don't think there's a right or wrong. And like I said, I think when someone is called, yes, do it. But then integration is very important, because I know people that will have a lot of psychedelic journeys, a lot. But then for me, it's like the ultimate evidence is like behavior change. Like, is your life changing? Are you attracting more secured partners? Are you doing like aligned and meaningful work? Do you feel good to be you? If not, and you keep doing psychedelics but nothing else, then probably it's not that. So stop banging on that door. Like that famous Alan Watts quote, when you get the message, you hang up the phone. Because it's like, okay, now let's put that into work, which is what I do. Then you come to me.
Yeah. How was it for you? Like, what was it? Let's return to the question we never got to answer. What was it for you? What was it for you that made you go, I really need integration? What happened? What was the realization point? And yeah, let's just start here.
Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, something I forgot to add to the previous one. Do we all need psychedelics? No, not everyone needs to take psychedelics. Would I want to live life without psychedelics? Fuck no. Why would I? Why would I want to experience less of life when I can experience more of life? But not everyone has the calling. Similar to not everyone wants to leave home when they're 11 and, get really uncomfortable for a decade. Not everyone wants to do that.
For the next rest of their lives.
I literally have friends that are like, what you do would have me panic.
Yeah, I received that a lot. They're like, how do you think about life? How do you do this? And like, very differently to you, but I'm not quite sure where to start with this. All right, let's go.
So back to integration. So what made me start looking into integration more? I've had many experiences, let's say, especially on psychedelics, because that is where I very often have felt like myself. Again, my intention is remember who you are. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that's how I am. And I'm awesome. And I really like who I am. And I thank God I am me and I'm not anyone else. And I'm such a cool bitch. Like feeling good, and I hope everyone can feel that about themselves. Like that is kind of the point, like whatever it is, like you don't have to be high vibe or anything. It's just whatever works. And then, so I've had so many experiences where it felt like this feels so good. Like right now, for someone who's generally super indecisive, I was like, now there's no dilemmas. Like I know what I want and I know what I need to do to get it. So suddenly, like the path is clear, and it's just, there's just so much more peace and fun. And I was like, well, I don't want to only experience that on MDMA. How can that be my baseline? Because if I accessed it once, I should be able to access it again and again. And I didn't think that it was the MDMA. The MDMA helped clear the path, but it was all coming from me. So that is just my experience, right? Everything I do, that's why my business is called the Alex Experience. Like, I don't claim to have all the answers, to know everybody's ways. Everything I talk about is through my own experience. So some people will have a very polar opposite experience to mine. Very often, for example, in the psychedelic space as well, some people will say, oh, ayahuasca told me this, or my spirit guides told me that. And so far I have only, it felt as if all the downloads and insights came from me. It was like, oh, I realized, I blah blah blah, which also helped me not outsource
Yeah.
that insight to the medicine, to something that is only accessible during that time. So then my life became, I had so many beautiful experiences, like again, from Robbins like workshop to the Joe Dispenza, just like experiences from my own mentors that I went to their retreats, and life was just right in those moments. And during MDMA and different psychedelics, that I was like, how can I be more of that more of the time? My life would look and feel completely different. Like I will be going on a very different direction. So then I started looking less after like 7 years of hopping. Literally, I would go, people would say, oh, you
Mm,
travel a lot. I'm like, well, that's where the retreat is.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm going back to India, not to see the Taj Mahal, because that's where that gathering is. Or like I spent 7 months in Peru and I never saw Machu Picchu because
Mm,
I was not there to see Machu Picchu. And I was like, I'll probably come back. Like I'm young, I'll come back. But it was like, right now, I'm not here to sightsee. So I would always go and find, like, it was the biggest priority of my life. How can I be astonished? How can I change my life? But then I kind of didn't like this rubber band of peak experience back to normal. Again, for me, normal, I was always kind of on the road. But still, it was, how do I feel about myself? I'm not feeling like I felt in the retreat. So how can we bring back the retreat experience? And that's when I found the psychedelic integration coaching, the training that I did. And I was like, okay, that's it. I will become a psychedelic integration coach. And I did. And I did the training. And right now I'm interning for the training. So like I'm in the other side still. Beautiful training. It gave me so much more confidence and frameworks to hold people in the psychedelic space, especially to prepare and integrate, because I don't facilitate experience. What I do is legal. I help them prepare and integrate. But it was like, oh, but I'm still not satisfied. I'm not complete. I understand that people they need to make sense of what happened, translate that into some type of action, and then I was like, okay, but what does that look like? So then it was about a year ago that I started pulling every tool, every piece of teaching that has ever supported me from different teachers and mentors. And I was like, okay, let's bring, what if we do like a Joe Dispenza inspired meditation, but in the way I felt in that retreat that I want more of. So if it
yeah.
feels like coming home, how does coming home feel in my body? And if I practice that every day, then that is real every day. So then I am more integrated. No one taught me that. I kind of had to use my own brain, which I guess kind of the point, to find your own answers.
Almost as
And
if.
then almost as if it's like, okay, probably, yeah, that's what I wanted. And then he was like, okay, maybe, oh, I understand that what I told you before. It's not only me doing my own work, like showing up, doing my practices, doing the yoga, blah, 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 but also I need an aligned community. Because I
Mm,
do so much better when I work with a mentor who gets it and who's ahead. And I do even better when I'm not just with my mentor, but also with a community of people, whether that's a group program, like a coaching program, whether like now in the online space, I'm like, we can bring that retreat experience into our homes because there's so many cool stuff happening online. So then I joined a few coaching programs that would keep me in that remembrance of like, oh yeah, this is who I am and I really like it and I'm on purpose and I'm taking action and I'm working on my goals and my visions. And I was like, okay, and there must be more. Oh, I need a vision, because if I don't have a vision
mhm,
that's compelling, there's no point to do my
yeah.
practices. It's like, where am I going?
Yeah.
What am I doing this?
And I think this is such a big part in, like, I've seen that with myself because I regularly, not regularly, but with some regularity go through these waves when I'm extremely clear on my vision, on my path. And then comes, the underwater part. And when there
Yeah.
isn't this vision where you're kind of like what you said, who the fuck am I? Why am I here? What is the point of this? It is so difficult to take action. And people go into all of these other, they think they need to learn more marketing. They think they need
Yeah.
to, clear subconscious beliefs. They do money mindset
Yeah.
work. And it's like,
Yeah.
But what's the
Mm.
drive? What is this energy current, this like river that's underlying the frequency that's underlying everything you do that is actually moving you forward? Without
Yeah,
that, I mean, first of all, life has no meaning, which if life has no meaning for a human, there's no point to
that's
anything.
it.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Literally, that's it. And I
yeah.
think this is the part as well I've seen, right? It's always coming back to why and what's the vision. N I also find oftentimes it's the work we most avoid doing, figuring out what is it
Mm.
that we want and what is the actual vision we have, and we kind of
Mm.
clutter our time with everything else. I've definitely done this, I still do it, it's my favorite form of self-sabotage, like, full
Yeah,
disclosure, instead of actually
yeah,
getting really clear, because it's what you said, when you have this clarity, when you're and that really means being really connected, right, to your truth, to who you are,
yeah,
everything opens up, things flow. And yeah, there are
yeah,
challenges on the path 100%, but solutions come your way. You're also so resourced in figuring out how
yeah,
to actually move either through them or around them. And
yeah,
I love that you brought this up because I think it's
yeah,
lacking in this, and also in the
yeah,
entrepreneurship space. And I've seen if that's not there, everything else is going to be hard, and you might as well like put stuff on hold and go figure out what is the
yeah.
vision, what is the mission.
There's two things I can say to this. One from my experience, one from my client's experience. So personally, I went to this incredible workshop slash retreat years ago, and it was teaching the art of happiness and how to be happy, but they were not teaching vision. So I got a lot of amazing things, and but I was still something was missing, and I was like, well, yeah, like getting my nails done makes me joyous at the moment. Like going on a day with my hubby makes me joy. But I'm like, but that doesn't give me the reason to get out of bed in the morning. And it wasn't until I feel like vision and purpose are together because purpose is a personal thing. I mean, on one hand, our purpose is to be, and so we are. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist. And but we all have like our personal twist, I think. And when I realized that all I want to do is self actualize and help others self actualize,
Yeah.
that gave me like the rest of my life planned, really. Even though that can change and I can change my ideas and how I actualize this mission. But it's like now I have a reason to get out of bed in the morning and I know what I need to do and I do it. And there's still so much resistance, and because the mission is really big, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's too much bigger than I am and I cannot do this. And, so then there's a whole other hero's journey there that we need to navigate. But still, I'm like, well, I know that if I feel bad, it's because I'm not doing the things that I want to be doing. And I'm actually, because I found the path. But before finding the path, it was really hard. And that's something that I get very often the question from people of like, how do you do the work when you don't feel like doing it? And how do you continue to, like, say, meditate even when you are just not in a good mood? And I'm like, well, I think you forgot why you're doing it, because the meditation is a means to an end. It's not the end. So it's not you need to meditate to check an item of the to-do list. It's you wanna whatever. Be one with the universe. You want to be present. You want a break from thought. Sometimes my intention for meditating is that I want to rest. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to spend 20 minutes with my body. I think all day. I just want to not think for a bit. So I'll just like do a body scan. It can be whatever it is, but it's like the intention is to be good, right? To be in alignment, to
Mhm.
feel good, to feel on purpose. So, like, whatever practice is your jam, then you do that in order to be more of who you are, more of your aligned self, more of the time, so that you don't have autoimmune diseases and cancer and like bunch of like anger, like resentment that's been suppressed, and suddenly it becomes like fucking rheumatoid arthritis. Anyway, so it's like
Yeah.
basically it's like, yeah, remember what you're doing this for and where is it that you're going. Because when we forget the why behind the actions, and we forget like where we're like, what am I doing this for? Like, in taking action, the best way to predict the future is to see what you do every day and how all those actions will compound. So it's like, well, where am I taking myself today?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and if I want to end up there, well, work your way backwards. If I like, what do I need to do for the step before the goal is accomplished? And then 10 years before the goal, or like, we can only plan, say, 6 months at a time. So what do I need to do in the next 6 months? We can really ground it, because I love grounding things as well. Yeah.
I think this is like such a cool thing that humans have. I think we like underestimate so big, like, and undervalue, but our ability to future project
Yeah.
is that's insane. Like, to what we know, not many other beings have that ability on planet Earth. I'm not going to speak to the highly evolved animal species because they may, but a lot of the time we actually don't do this, right? We have like we
Yeah.
are actually extremely good at predicting like how our actions, what they will create. And obviously there are things we cannot predict a lot of the time, but we also use that as an excuse not to
Yeah.
actually just sit ourselves down and be like, and I have to do that sometimes with myself when I'm, kind of
Yeah.
like faffing about. But I
Yeah.
have to sometimes like sit myself down and be like, Alia, if we keep going the way we're going right now, where are we going to be? And it
Yeah.
sucks, like a lot of the time evaluating that. And yet what I see is a lot of people actually don't do that, or rather they lie
Yeah.
to themselves about it. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to work in holistic health before. It's
Yeah.
a really important question to evaluate. Like, if we keep going
Yeah.
this way, where are we going to be? And it's actually fascinating because we can predict intuitively, like very,
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah.
If this is
Yeah.
We may not be able to tell exactly how it's going to manifest, but we
Yeah.
know if we continue this way, we're going to be sick. And yet we don't actually do
Mm.
this, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
most people are very reactionary, right? They really do
Yeah.
it like one day at a time, but they don't actually put it in
Yeah.
perspective. And yeah, it's what you said, right? The best way to predict future is to create it, right? Like, as
Yeah.
cliche
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
that quote is, but it is true.
Yeah.
Effectively, it's only up to you. So you mentioned before that after all these years of doing the work and attending all these retreats and training in all these modalities, you pulled together a framework that is really
Yeah.
helping people integrate. And so I'm curious about you telling us a little bit more about what is in this framework, and
Yeah.
also how do you what are the options you offer people, because everybody's so different, right, in what it's going to help them, and how does like one actually find what works for them in terms of integration? What are the practices, things they can do on a
Mm.
daily basis to start
Yeah.
elevating and continue elevating this baseline of how they feel, right? Because that's what we want. We want to actually feel better. Everything we do is effectively for that, even if we
Of
try to
course.
shit ourselves, right?
Exactly.
That's the goal. So how do you
Yeah.
do that? What's the framework, and what does that look like in practice for different participants that come in?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there can be a variety of what happens. And that could be like to integrate psychedelic experiences, or to integrate like whatever you want more of. Like, it could be a trip abroad. Like, so, like, I had a client that just she's from Canada, and she went to Europe. She had like a trip in Europe, and she was like, I felt more like myself there, and I felt like the clarity of what I want to create. And I'm
Mm,
like, yeah, then that's what we're integrating, like yourself there, like wherever your true self was, and you want more of that. You tapped into this joy, this alignment, and that's what we can integrate. So it doesn't have to be psychedelics. It's just that the psychedelic space is one that everyone talks about integration, and I feel like no one's doing it. So it feels like an elephant in the room. Everyone says like it's the most important part, but everybody's winging it. And that's why I address that a lot, especially on LinkedIn. So I can definitely not support everyone, because integration is a very individualistic process, and it's very subjective as well. So often people that want to move maybe in the direction that I have moved in life, and they care about vision, and they care about maybe a pretty adventurous life where they want to escape predictable days, and they kind of resonate with like my whole philosophy of life, which is basically self-actualize or die trying.
mm,
Then they may be called to do it my way. But there have been people that have asked me about um symbology. Like, for example,
mhm,
psychedelic journeys come with a lot of visions and symbols, and not all of them are to be integrated, and not all of them are useful. Maybe not right now. Some of them might be 6 years later. And some of them, like ayahuasca, for example, speaks in metaphors a lot. You might see the jaguar, you might see a serpent, you might see the eagle. So it's not necessarily like going to ChatGPT and asking, what does the eagle mean? It's rather going to your shaman.
Sorry, I'm
You
just
know?
imagining the new stage of psychedelic integration where afterwards you write down the symbol and then you get us your custom script for ChatGPT. And yeah,
Exactly.
I think we've
Eh,
reached like peak singularity.
Absolutely. So for something like that, if someone is having a very, very confusing journey, say with ayahuasca, and there was a lot of symbolism there, I would prefer that they refer to their shamans and whatever ayahuasca brew they've had them help them integrate. And I've had clients that, not clients, more like some people that showed up in a few of my master classes, and they asked, oh, how about like Jungian's archetypes? And
Hmm.
there's many people in this space that work with that. I do not. So that's the thing. Like, if someone is interested in different things, then they are free to explore them. Like, we all might want different things in different stages of our lives, different folks for different strokes for different folks, all of that. Now, the way I teach it is based on what I've always needed and never had first, and then what I saw my clients lacking.
Mm.
And often, if I see someone having gaps, it might be some of the stages of the framework that I will mention to you that is not covered. So, what I've needed was that I would have these peak experiences and then I would leave that utopian scenario where you have either a potent psychedelic or a potent teacher or mentor, and everyone that doesn't have to go to work and do laundry and cook for other people, but they are just immersed and they're like, I don't know, meditating for 5 hours and then they're discussing about consciousness. But when you leave that environment and then you go into an environment where people, friends, sometimes even our partner does not quite had the same experience, so you kind of feel alone, isolated, and so on. And it's as if like we are left at the peak of the breakthrough when we need support the most. We need support at the breakthrough and after. Like, how can we walk through this and stay in the breakthrough? Now, what's really important to mention is that psychedelics, but also other experiences, create like this afterglow. Like in our brain, there's like the critical learning period, as we say, that you take a psychedelic and then the neuroplasticity that is created, different parts of the brain connecting, which is why we have different ideas, new
Mhm.
insights, solutions to problems that didn't seem to have solutions. And suddenly you're on mushrooms, even a microdose, and you're like, oh my gosh, I could just send this email this way, or I could just
Yeah.
ask for that. Because there's like psychedelics are actually good for the brain, unlike unlike traditional propaganda.
Yeah.
So then after the experience, depending on the medicine, it will be a few days to a few weeks. Like ayahuasca tends to be longer, psilocybin will be less. Depending on the psychedelic and the dosage, there will still be this like fertile ground in our brain to continue doing the work. We're still open. We still feel very connected. We still feel quite unbothered and unfuckwithable. It
Yeah.
feels like, oh my, like it feels as if I really got it and I've transcended it. But what actually happens is that you're still in the afterglow, which is a great time to start putting in the work. And what is that? That is staying in connection with community. If you cannot stay connected with the people you've had the experience with, then join an integration group. Integration, when it was a positive experience, especially, I think it works best in a group. If it was extremely painful and challenging and traumatizing sometimes, it can be best served in a one-to-one setting because you can go much deeper. But either case, like having a group of people holding you can be extremely supportive. So one of the things of the things that I say to everybody is like, have the coach, someone that understands the experience and can also guide you to the light, connect the puzzle pieces, but also have a group of people, which is why integration groups work, to really hold you all together. They know the experience, they offer support, they offer reflection, you offer that back, which is also very healing to support someone else. Makes you feel better, it makes you feel useful, and we are useful. We do need each other just to give and receive support. So having a mentor, having a group to continue like staying in momentum with. And then doing the damn work on your own as well. Like I said before, 50-50. 50% us doing what we can, 50% also having the support, the structure around us that makes it easier. It's easier to, so many times I've said, oh, I will do breath work. Breath work is something that I've always struggled motivating myself to do because it's extremely uncomfortable. With meditation, for some reason, we can hang out. But with breathwork, I'm like, oh, yeah, one day I'll do it. But then when I signed up to a course that had breathwork in it, and I had calls in my calendar and I paid for it, I showed up and I felt amazing after.
Yeah, skin in the game.
So exactly, skin in the game. So it's really important to, like have something to make, in shamanism, they call it holy entrapment. Like to entrap myself in the things that I want that will help me, especially when I don't feel like it. Now, research says that it takes 2 to 8 months to form a habit, a new habit. And for those who have read Atomic Habits, which is probably like most of the Western world at this point, James Clear talks about this a lot. Like we need to stay in consistency with something for long enough until it becomes pretty much automatic. Like for me, when I started going to the gym, I was fighting it and I was going pissed because I didn't want to go, but I knew that it's good for me. And then now, 5 years later, I get in my clothes, go, come back, move on with my life. It's not this massive negotiation. It's just what it is. It's fine. It's kind of like taking a shower. It just happens. So this is the thing of like, whether it is like, I'm a big meditation fan. I wouldn't do life without it. So for me, like something that works, and I do it with my clients. Now that's another thing. Like, why would someone work with me? They're willing and happy to meditate, and maybe they have been doing it for years, or maybe they want to, or they want to experience the approach that I do. So meditation is part of it. So what I do is like I write down the intentions that someone has had, and the insights rather than the intentions of like, this is what I experienced, and these were the good moments. Write them down, and then I curate a meditation bringing those back and having them feel that in their bodies. Someone can do that on their own too. So they can play medicine music if there was any music that was playing in the ceremony, because I can bring back the experience, and they can bring themselves back to that moment and the felt experience. And if it is that, what is it that they felt? Maybe there was expansion in the chest, and then, be with that expansion in the chest. And if it was that, oh, I really remembered who I am, well, how does that feel? Can I feel like that now? Time is really an illusion. We think it's linear, it's not. So you can bring it back. If you're experiencing it right now, experiencing it not thinking about it, which is what journaling often does, but actually feeling it in your body and having the medicine music too. If there were incense, sage, palo santo, you can bring that too. Right? So kind of evoke the senses. The heart is the great integrator. So like, what are the emotions that were there that you want more of? Bring it in the body. So that's another thing that I teach. Then the importance of having a vision that we spoke about, right? So it's not going to stick to just do things if there's no long-term exciting pull. So like, what are you doing all of this for? Like having a vision is so important. So community, a coach can be extremely supportive, especially after this scattered and disorganized and all over, because often you come back and you're like, what do I do with all this, and where do I go from there? So it's really important to also have like this guide. Then doing whatever practices bring back the ceremonies or the experiences, felt experience, having that the way we go to the gym. Like you would go 2-3 times a week, say. Well, it's similar to those practices. Like you do need to have them fairly regularly so that you rewire yourself more and more and more. Mindset, beliefs, all of these things are very important, which I'm sure you talk about as well. It's like, and there's something that, because if we don't believe something is possible for us, it's not going to happen. And if the energetics, of course, I know you talk about that. So if the energy is, if you believe it's inevitable, if you know this is who you are and this is coming for you, and you know that you're on the path, like it changes the energy. And so aligning all those different layers, which personally is hard for me to do without a coach, because we do need that guidance often. because we can confuse ourselves with all the
Yeah,
different
and
voices in
totally
our head.
like miss the point and get like lost in our own thoughts and just
Yeah.
it is like I used to for a while be like, no, I don't believe that we can see our own blind spots. Like I definitely
Mm.
see a lot of my blind spots. And granted, there are many blind spots I catch. And then recently I've been realizing I'm like, yeah, no, I am not as good as I thought that I was
Yeah.
at it. So definitely having someone who can
Yeah.
call out your bullshit, even if it's a
Yeah.
friend who's just very conscious, like we all really
Yeah.
need that.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Which is also why like aligned
Yeah.
relationships are so important. Like that is part of the framework. Like it's really hard to grow on our own.
Yes.
And in the conversation that we had last time, that you said like, oh, these people feel enlightened, but they actually remove themselves from everyone that triggers them. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's not healing because you're
That's
not
not
actually
healing.
growing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like if you put yourself in a little bubble where nothing can trigger you, then of course you're not triggered. But how are you going to check if you've actually changed? Right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
It the best work, the biggest growth I think happens in relationships, which is
Yeah.
often the most
Yeah.
annoying work to do.
Yeah. But I have to say for me, really, like, because a lot of people, you know, obviously I work with entrepreneurs predominantly, and there's, you know, so much of, we place so much success and achievement on, you know, financial goals and milestones and 10K months and like all of these things. And I always tell people I really could not. I could not give a shit about that because, like, what I really
Yeah.
teach is
Yeah.
evolution of consciousness through the lens of business, right? Like, for me,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
much money
Yeah.
you're making, are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are
Yeah.
you having good
Yeah.
relationships, right, with your loved ones?
Yeah.
And I know for me, like, yeah, I've hit many milestones in my business. I've created amazing things. Like, obviously, I was happy. But the few times when I really kind of patted myself on the back was, for example, recently, right, when I moved back home. And I think in the
Mm.
entire time that I've been here, which has now been a month, I maybe got triggered like once. Whereas it used
Mm.
to be a shit
Yeah.
show. Like for me, coming
Yeah.
back home was like a traumatic experience every time. And I
Yeah.
really was recently, I sat down, I was like, wow, I've really done the work. You know, I
Yeah.
have really done
Yeah.
the work, not because of the externally facing successes or my CV. I can have a good
Yeah.
relationship with my parents. Like that
Yeah.
never was the case. And
Yeah.
I'm not feeling like agitated and afraid and threatened, you know, at
Yeah.
home. I can actually feel
Yeah.
safe in the house that some of my
Mm.
most painful memories happened in. And I think
Yeah.
like we don't like we place so much of our attention on what is actual success and healing on again external metrics that they can be 100%. They can also be an indicators of healing. Like financial healing is really important, I think, especially for women. It's such a big part of
Yeah.
empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also because of the capitalistic system and the value
Mm.
system we were raised in, it's entangled in a totally different way with self-worth that just should not be there, ideally.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think we don't pay attention to the things that truly matter at the end of the
Yeah.
day. The number
Yeah.
in your bank account is not. Of course,
Yeah.
like it can provide amazing experiences, but what you're gonna truly care about when you're lying on your deathbed is not how much money you
Yeah.
have in your bank account.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Which is like that whole holistic, as you just said, and this is like one of the things that I teach too that are in the framework. It's like you cannot really rely on one aspect of your life and expect that every aspect is going to improve. It reminds me of that like wheel of life, you know, that
Yeah,
like kind of journaling exercise when it's like, yeah, if you're working on your mindset and also your emotions and also your body and also, you know, you sleep well and also you align the energetics and like the more aspects of yourself, because we are a complex system, you target yourself from, of course it's going to get better and better. And it reminds me of a friend of mine who once said to me, things only work when we work on all our levels all at once, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, the physical. Because if you're only doing one, it's just not really working. So that's one of the things, like I often say to my clients, I hope our sessions is not the only thing that you do,
yeah,
because if it is, it can take a decade,
yeah,
especially if we only meet once a week.
yeah,
For integration, I recommend twice a week and often for longer than an hour each time, because it is a lot of retrain. Like if we spend an hour together a week, what are you doing for the rest of how many hours in a week?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule, like the Pareto principle. If 80% of the time you are in alignment, that's great. If you're only like 5% of the time and 95 you're gossiping and complaining and you're a victim of your
Mm,
life, then that is who you still are. Just do
yeah.
the math.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that holistic mindset is just so important. And lastly, like what I said, and which kind of brings us back to the beginning of like the importance of doing this long term,
Hmm.
because we live in a society with like Amazon Prime and instant this, instant that, instant gratification, fast delivery. And it's like, well, healing, it took decades to program you into who you are.
Yes.
It's not gonna take 5 hours of a mushroom trip to undo decades.
And ancestry and past lives, right? Like we should
Yeah,
not forget that it's
exactly.
like
Yeah,
your first 20
yeah,
years, your first 7 years are plenty
yeah,
to work on for the rest of your life, but you also have
that's
like
so true.
everything else that
Yeah,
is also
that's a
present
really
there.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like people, like if the more people, and like the more I do it, the more I get better at this. The more people just get really patient and relax into their healing journey and be like, this will take the rest of my life and that's fine. It seems like I see fitness this way. Like it's kind of shifting from the mindset of I just want to lose weight by this wedding. So like 60 days versus I want to be shredded and fit and smoking hot, and every decade I'm hotter and hotter. Well, then you're really training for the rest of your life and you're eating differently and you're doing all the other things.
Yeah.
You
And I
know?
think this is like where this importance of falling in love with the process comes in. Like at some
Right.
point, and I think at the beginning, it's rare for people to do that because when we're at the beginning of this process, normally we start it because we are running away from immense amounts of pain. And I think it's important to acknowledge that most people don't start spiritual awakening processes because they're having the best time of their life. Like they wouldn't be doing it,
Yeah,
right? We go
that's a
because, I
good
mean,
point.
for me, it was, lots of things, but the biggest one was chronic health issues that I had for all of my life that I
Yeah.
was like, well,
Yeah.
it's either going to be Western medicine way, which means things will never fucking change and they will get worse with time because I had luckily enough foresight to understand that it's not just going to go away on its own. Even though people try to convince me that it might, I'm like, that is not good enough for me,
Yeah.
or I do something very differently. But then there
Yeah.
is going to be a point where, and that I think is a super interesting point, both in personal growth journey and entrepreneurial journey, where you reach the point where you're no longer motivated by pain alone. And then
Yeah.
you have to, and that's where this vision and bigger
Yeah.
desire needs to come into place because otherwise, you don't have that drive because it's hard. Like it is hard
Yeah.
to make decisions. Like, for me this year, making decision to end a 7-year relationship, which was good, really good, but it was not the potential I was looking for. I lost
Yeah.
everything, right? I lost my
Yeah.
home. I moved back to my
Yeah.
parents. Like I lost my
Yeah.
partner,
Yeah.
the main person who was there to provide for me emotionally, to provide safe
Yeah.
space. Like these are
Yeah.
not easy decisions to make, and there has
Yeah.
to be something else that actually keeps you moving in that direction, and you have to fall in love with the process. And I think you have to
Yeah.
fall in love with also the uncomfortable parts of the process. And I think for
Yeah.
me, this was one of the biggest parts this summer where I was going through this incredibly deep and mystical process that I don't really know how to explain. That was like just ancestral patterns, past life patterns, like so much stuff happening, energetic oaths, obligations, and the partnerships, like immense amounts
Mm.
of
Mm.
anxiety. And, there were
Mm.
days when I had to like literally walk myself to get up from the couch, make myself food, go for a walk. That was like a lot of effort. And there were
Yeah.
moments during that where I was like, wow, this is so beautiful in such a weird
Mm.
way, because you
Yeah.
acknowledge just the profound nature of the frequency expansion, frequency change, identity change that's occurring, right? Like the processes that we can't even put words on that are happening in the background in terms of soul's evolution. And I think once you can start falling in love with this process and you understand it is gonna happen for the rest of your life. Like there is no end game, and then it's gonna keep happening for the rest of your next life.
Yeah.
wherever that's going to be,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the
Yeah.
next one. It doesn't
Yeah.
actually ever change. And once you're fully back with oneness, you're going to come back and it's going to be
Mm.
all over again. And I think
Oh
this is
gosh.
like the part where then you're like, okay, so how do I also make this enjoyable? And I think this is where a
Yeah.
lot of the time the challenge is as well, right? Because I think a lot of the time at the start, and I don't know, we can speak about how that is for you and your clients, but a lot of the time at the beginning, we force ourselves, right? And we're like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything right and I'm going to follow this script.
Mm.
And that's not actually sustainable long term. I remember when I made that shift in sports, because I always used to do sports, that I did the
Mm.
things I was supposed to do, to actually
Mm.
one day waking up and being like, wait, what if there's like type of sports I would actually enjoy? And that was
Yeah.
revolutionary for me, you know? And then
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
Yeah.
there are types of sports that I genuinely love doing, like rock climbing,
Yeah.
horse riding, going
Yeah.
for long
Yeah.
walks, right? Like I could do that every
Yeah.
fucking day. Whereas
Yeah.
going for a run every day is not going to happen. Like
Yeah.
not a chance in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's similar
Yeah.
also with this personal work, right? Why it's becoming so personalized in today's day and age, which I think is amazing. I think is amazing where actually some people are really against, cherry picking, and there are definitely downsides to that from different traditions. And at the same
Yeah.
time, we are starting to honor the fact that we are all different, especially if you're a woman, whereas a lot of spiritual traditions were not actually made for women.
Yeah, exactly, right. Because a lot of spiritual practices are also very masculine practices. It's
Yeah.
very directive, and you need to be in control. And I definitely had phases where I needed that because my feminine was
Yeah.
just chaos, and I was drowning
Yeah.
in it, and I needed some of like the masculine side to help me like control the chaos. But also what you said there about this sports example that I've loved is it reminds me of that Martin Seligman quote, the creator of positive psychology, which says the purpose of life is to find out who we are and to spend as much time expressing our strengths,
Yeah.
expressing that as possible, which is what I've always intuitively done. It felt like I used to do it in guilt, following the things that I loved. I used to teach yoga in exchange for free accommodations in hostels and yoga studios. I was a hippie. I was traveling, but not because I was a digital nomad. I was a hippie. And I was living in very cheap hostels and sleeping in airports. Once I took a freaking non direct flight from UK to Greece through Italy to save 20 euros
I
and
totally
spend
remember those
24
times.
hours. So stupid.
I
Like now
remember those
it's like,
times, like, I look back at me doing this, I'm like, "What the fuck was that?" But hey, testimony to how far we've come, making
yeah.
10K months, like, the scarcity was real 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And it's also like the evolution of like back then, that was important to me. Now, yeah, I do care about money much more. And I also care about how I make it. Because I'm selling a couch right now. Like the money I make from selling the couch doesn't do anything. The money I make from a client that I support feel truly alive,
Yeah,
that means a lot to me.
yeah,
So, like, if someone gives me the money, it's like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. But if I made it out of my passion and my purpose, and I can see, like one of my clients now, I mean, it's not just me, like I said, because she's also having the aligned community. She also decided to pivot careers and she just quit her forever job, like 20 years of this career climbing up the ladder. She's selling the apartment in a really fancy location and she's about to travel somewhere that she hasn't decided yet. And she said to me, I truly feel what it's like to be alive now. And to me, that means so much more, like spreading this work of like actually following the breadcrumbs of the things that you love and the things that have probably always been there. And just doubling down, like it's better. Like as you said with sports, I heard from Tim Ferriss at some point saying it's so much better to find something that you're good at and keep like strengthening that than to find something you're average at and keep trying to get better, because at best you're gonna be average good there.
yes,
But when you love what you do and you're talented at it and you're like or you want to be, then that's gonna be life-giving. It's not gonna be draining. And it, like life has a lot of hardship, as you said, as you just went through as well. Like, let's make it easier, lighter. It can be funny as well.
yeah,
It
exactly.
doesn't always have to be heavy. Like, of course. So let's find the things that save us. And then like let's let those things heal us. That's what I see often, like with my business. Like I'm doing this for myself too. It's just how I self-express. And if it inspires or helps one person, then oh my gosh, that's amazing. Then it grows to something more than me. But yeah, following that vision, following those passions, I find to be life-saving, to be honest.
I think it is. I mean, is what you said. I think what you put in one of your posts after Burning Man, right? It's
Mm,
creating a life not only worth living, but a life worth
mm,
dying for. And I think
exactly.
ultimately there are many people who don't feel about life that way, but I think there's a certain percentage of us, amongst them pretty much all the listeners of this podcast, that they have that same itch and they know that life
Yeah.
can be extraordinary. They know there is so much more out there, regardless of what area of your life you're looking at, that be health, that be finances, that be relationships. And what a time to be alive where we actually get to pursue that. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
And we get to have these conversations and learn from other people.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like we could talk forever about all these things. I'll probably have you back and we can dive into some other topics.
Yay.
But we are going to wrap it up because we're at an
We
hour and a
did
half
it.
here. So, final thing, tell us about where the listeners can find you. And I know you have an experience coming up as well that
Yeah.
will probably happen after this podcast is released. So people may be able to actually join live still. So, but tell us
Yeah.
about where they can find you, where are the best places to connect, and how they can come contact you and come work with you if they're interested.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm quite active on Instagram and LinkedIn. These are the two platforms that I mainly use. It's the Alex Experience on Instagram. I started TikTok, but it's very low key as well. But it's the same name, the Alex Experience. And on Instagram, my handle is Alexandra Artzoglou. I don't
And we'll
expect
put
anyone
everything
to
in the
learn.
show notes. Yeah.
I don't expect anyone to know how to spell that. So yeah, just follow that link. And yeah, I have the 3-day, it's called the new normal, because that is the thing that I am the most passionate about. I've coached many people that said to me, like, I've had this amazing experience in ayahuasca. How can I turn this into my new normal? And it's like, that's exactly what I've always wanted first. And that's what breaks my heart is people not doing it. Like they drop the ball after the peak experience and they go back to this, back to normal. Meow, 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 like quite
Yeah.
pathetic. And then it's like, well, yeah, like let's come and actually normalize extraordinary expansion, man, feeling so good that you don't want this to end, that you go to sleep excited to wake up like a kid
Yeah.
that's it's their birthday the next day and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for tomorrow to come. That's how I wish more of us lived, because it's possible and it's right
Yeah.
here. We just need to learn how to do it. And it does take some structure, which is what I teach. Like I've shared a lot of this framework here today. We're going to go much deeper in the class to help people actually take those beautiful experiences and turn them into a ladder for self-actualization of like, oh, life gets better and better and better and there's no end, that it can keep getting better when I know how to entrap myself in a system that makes it easier to feel good than to feel stuck, basically. And then we go deeper after teaching this framework. We go deeper on how to move with resistance, because in every next level, there's higher levels of resistance. And I see so many people quit there. Resistance shows up and then they quit, change minds, change direction, but then they come back and they're like, no, that is what I want to do. So like learning how to move through that point of no return, really, in the hero's journey is so important. And also vision, that we also touched on today, like how to create a vision that is so good that it pulls you towards your goals, as opposed to people just pushing and forcing and grinding through willpower alone to do. Like sometimes like we bully ourselves into personal development when it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be for fun.
Mm-hmm. I'm a queen of that. I'm so good at
Yeah.
that. I'm like, we're gonna criticize ourselves into expansion. We're working on it.
Exactly.
Getting better.
Doesn't really work. I've done that for so many years. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you how long, until 2023.
Yeah.
So very recently I
Yeah.
started like putting the whip down and like
Yeah.
starting to treat myself with more
Yeah. I
compassion.
like
But
compassion, love. I
yeah,
was just thinking today, I'm like, wow, we're actually having now every single day of compassion, like moments of
Yeah.
compassion and kindness. I'm
Yeah.
like, we've come a really long way. Like, and
Exactly.
again, something we
Yeah.
don't talk enough about how important that is.
Yeah. So important. Like compassion, gratitude, and forgiveness are the three big things that everyone preaches, and it's a process to get there. You can't just snap your fingers and get there. But when we do, I think life becomes something else. Like the same life we get to experience in such different ways, which is why this work works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Alex, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
here, sharing
you.
this with us. It was an absolute joy to have you here, to have your energy. I love your energy. Just so bubbly and expansive and fun. I'm sure we're going to do another episode. And thank you so much.
Yay. Thank you, Alia. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. Thank you for the invitation. And I can't wait to keep following your work too, because I know it's going to be evolving after what you've been through.
It is. It is. We'll see how, but that is certain. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Much love.